1923 Season 2 has finally come to an end, but this isn't just another finale. It marks the conclusion of a story that stretched across years, spanned 3 continents, and tested every ounce of strength the Dutton family had left. From love and loss to revenge and survival, 1923 delivered one of the most intense journeys we've ever witnessed in the Yellowstone universe. But here's the twist: this may not be the end at all. Because hidden within the final scenes of the season 2 finale lies a subtle, powerful clue, one that could change the future of the entire franchise. What really happened in those last moments? What do they mean for the legacy of the Duttons and the next chapter of this epic saga? Let's break it down, because what comes next might just surprise you. At the very end of 1923 Season 2, we witnessed a whirlwind of events that tried to wrap up nearly every major storyline the show had been building for 2 entire seasons. And when I say a few important developments, what I really mean is an avalanche of resolutions, all crammed into one final, emotional, borderline chaotic 2-hour stretch. It was intense. It was tear-jerking. Honestly, I cried for at least 40 minutes straight. The heartbreak was real. The stakes were high. And yes, if you've been following the fan theories, you'll know that most of our predictions actually came true. On paper, it sounds like the perfect finale, right? But let's not sugarcoat it. Just because something ties up loose ends doesn't mean it sticks the landing. The truth is, something felt off, rushed, underwhelming, and dare I say, slightly unsatisfying. I mean, we've spent years following these characters across continents, from the battlefields of Africa to the snowy plains of Montana, watching them endure unthinkable loss and survive one trauma after another. But when it finally came time for the emotional payoff, the execution felt like a checklist being rushed through before the credits rolled. And here's my biggest question: did we really need Spencer to return to Montana to save the ranch? We were made to believe that his journey home was the epic, long-awaited key to preserving the Dutton legacy. But in the end, what did he really do? He killed 5 men in a bar brawl and shot Donald in the head. That's it. 5 guys. No complex strategy. No legendary last stand. Just a burst of violence, and it was over. Couldn't Jacob have done that himself, especially if it was as simple as walking into Donald's home and firing a gun? Or better yet, why not just hire a few more capable ranch hands? Don't get me wrong, Spencer is a phenomenal character. His arc had moments of real depth and power. But the way it all wrapped up, it raises more questions than it answers. Was all that pain and distance truly worth the payoff? Or was this just another case of a Yellowstone universe story running out of runway? Because if this was supposed to be the big climax, it didn't roar. It whimpered. Apparently, there are no consequences for such actions in this universe, and we're supposed to be fine with it. I don't know about you guys, but that didn't sit right with me. Don't get me wrong, I'm not mad at how things ended. I always wanted Spencer to kill Donald, and I always wanted him to be the one who saves the ranch. But I think the journey to that end should have been more complicated, more challenging, more worth the wait. But let me know what you thought about it. The most important result of all this, however, was the fact that Spencer is alive and well ready to shoulder yet another season of the show, or even a brand new prequel series. Unfortunately, though, his journey is likely to be a lonely one. If I asked you what left the worst taste in your mouth after watching the 1923 finale, I'm willing to bet the majority of you would scream Alexandra's death. And honestly, I don't blame you one bit. After everything she endured throughout the season, from being torn from Spencer, nearly dying at sea, navigating war-torn relationships, and fighting with every ounce of her strength to survive, you'd think she had earned at least a peaceful ending. But no! Instead, she's handed one of the most soul-crushing send-offs in the entire Yellowstone universe. I mean, come on. She went through all that just to give up at the very end? The heartbreak hit like a freight train. I was genuinely stunned. My jaw dropped, my heart sank, and my eyes bone dry from crying. Watching someone like Alexandra, who represented hope, resilience, and unconditional love, go out like that was nothing short of devastating. It wasn't just sad, it felt cruel. And I know Taylor Sheridan is no stranger to tragedy. He's built a universe on pain, sacrifice, and the heavy price of legacy. But at this point, it feels like he's allergic to happy endings. In his world, love stories are cursed, and characters are doomed to walk a path paved with suffering. It's as if he believes there was no happiness in the past, only despair, duty, and death. But honestly, that belief is getting old. Disagree with me if you want, but I will die on this hill. The series should have ended with Spencer and Alexandra finally reunited on the Montana ranch. Picture it surrounded by the land they fought so hard to return to, building a future together, raising the next generation of Duttons. That would have been an emotionally satisfying, deeply earned conclusion. Instead, what we got felt like a tragic draft that someone forgot to revise. And now, the story feels incomplete, rushed, disjointed. Spencer's arc, once so full of promise, now feels robbed of its emotional payoff. Alexandra's legacy is reduced to a grave marker. And once again, we're being strung along for yet another season or spin-off to fill in the blanks. The fatigue is real. Then there's the baby. Let's talk about that. A premature baby surviving in that era, with minimal medical care? Sure, maybe we can suspend disbelief, but expecting an elderly woman like Cara, who has given everything to her family, to raise that child? It's beyond unrealistic, it's unfair. She deserves peace, not diapers and sleepless nights. That entire sequence made me pause and think, is this really the most logical direction for the story? I had to mentally clock out just to make it through that part. But despite all the emotional wreckage, there's still a flicker of hope. The upcoming Yellowstone chapters promise to show us more of Spencer's life. We'll get to see him as a father finally fulfilling the potential that was cruelly cut short in 1923. That idea alone makes me hopeful. And yet, even that hope is bittersweet. The final episode confirmed that Spencer lives until 1969, ultimately dying at Alexandra's grave. He ends up in a relationship with a widowed woman and has another child but never marries her. Why that detail was included, I'll never know. It felt odd, unnecessary, and strangely judgmental. As if refusing to remarry was meant to be some badge of honor. But at what cost? So much information, so much heartbreak, and still no closure. Let me know in the comments, do you agree Alexandra deserved better? Or was this just Sheridan being Sheridan? Should we be praising Spencer for that? For doing a woman wrong just because he couldn't forget his first love? Well, in that case, maybe he shouldn't have gotten involved with anyone else at all. Am I right? But here's the thing, I can't shake the feeling that we're still missing a huge piece of the puzzle. What we saw in the finale of 1923 wasn't just a random creative choice. It was a calculated move on Taylor Sheridan's part. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew we'd hate that scene with Spencer. He knew we'd question every little detail, why he turned cold, why he abandoned love, and why he ended up with someone else entirely. Sheridan wanted us to feel unsettled because the story isn't over yet. In fact, the next chapter is already in the works. And yes, I'm talking about 1944. 1944 isn't just another random prequel. It's essentially 1923 Season 3 in disguise. It's the bridge between what happened to Spencer and how the Dutton family evolved into the modern-day version we see in Yellowstone. It's going to dig deep into that mysterious widowed woman. Spencer ends up with the one he never marries, despite having a child with her. We're going to find out why he couldn't commit, what haunted him after Alexandra's death, and how that child shaped the Dutton legacy in ways we've barely scratched the surface of. And this is where things get really interesting. A growing number of fans believe that Spencer's child, yes, the one with the widowed woman, might be connected to none other than Jamie Dutton in Yellowstone. Think about it. Gareth once told Jamie that the ranch was his birthright, that it was always meant for him. But if Jamie's bloodline actually traces back to Spencer's illegitimate child, then he is a Dutton, but not in the way anyone expected. That means we're not just watching a family drama, we're watching a slow-burning civil war between legitimate and illegitimate sons. A war for legacy, for power, and for identity. If Sheridan pulls this off, we could be in for one of the most emotionally complex storylines in the entire Yellowstone universe. And don't worry, I've got you covered. I'll be diving deep into this wild theory and all the tangled branches of the Dutton family tree in an upcoming video. So, if you want to truly understand the chaos behind Jamie's origins and how it all links back to Spencer, make sure you're subscribed and stay tuned. But before we get too lost in the future, let's talk about another injustice that still makes my blood boil: Elizabeth and Jack. After Spencer and Alexandra, they are easily the second most tragic couple in 1923. And let me just say it, Sheridan did them dirty. I'm not even exaggerating. Jack and Elizabeth deserve an apology, or better yet, a lawsuit filed for emotional damage. Jack's death? It was brushed off like a background detail. No emotional weight, no lasting grief from the Dutton family. Just gone. And Elizabeth? She was practically erased. This woman gave everything: her dreams, her hope, her future, and was treated like an afterthought. The moment she disappeared from the story, I literally screamed at my screen. Her entire arc was reduced to filler when it could have been one of the most powerful stories of love, loss, and resilience. Sheridan has a habit of creating incredible female characters only to throw them into the abyss without justice. And I'm tired of it. We deserved more. They deserved more. Let me know in the comments, do you think 1944 will redeem Spencer's legacy? Or will it just deepen the heartbreak? And what are your thoughts on Elizabeth and Jack? Did they deserve better? Because one thing's for sure, there's still so much left to uncover in this ever-twisting saga of the Dutton dynasty. I know a lot of you aren't fans of Elizabeth, but let's be fair for a moment and acknowledge that this woman did everything she could to survive. She even killed someone for the ranch. What more could she have done? I genuinely have no idea. Despite all this, Cara didn't even give her a hug at the end. Instead, she basically dismissed all of Elizabeth's efforts, treating her as if she had betrayed the family. Yes, in a way, Cara was giving her permission to move on with her life after Jack, but her tone and approach were so cold and heartless that I couldn't help but feel deep sadness for Elizabeth. One of the most heartbreaking and frankly infuriating moments in 1923 came not in the form of a death or a betrayal, but in a conversation. A single conversation where Cara, the matriarch of the Dutton family, casually dismissed everything Elizabeth had endured. With just a few words, Cara implied that Elizabeth would forget Jack, forget the ranch, and move on with her life as if none of it ever mattered. As if Elizabeth hadn't bled for this land. As if she hadn't loved Jack with every fiber of her being. Let's be honest, that moment stung. It felt like a betrayal, not just of Elizabeth's character, but of the entire journey she went through, one that fans invested in deeply. This wasn't some summer fling or temporary crush. Elizabeth literally became a woman on that ranch. She bore the physical and emotional scars of a life that most couldn't handle for a single day. She survived a wolf attack, took life-altering vaccines, and stood by Jack through war, loss, and chaos. She suffered a miscarriage in silence. And yet, through all of that, she never stopped believing in their future. And how was she repaid? With a dismissive comment, like she was just some naive girl who'd get over it. Cara, of all people, should have known better. She should have seen Elizabeth not as a fragile outsider, but as someone who earned her place in the family through blood, sweat, and resilience. What makes this worse is the sheer hypocrisy of what follows. Moments later, we hear Elsa's voice say, "Spencer never forgot Alexandra." The narrative gives Alexandra a noble, eternal memory. Spencer gets to mourn her forever, and it's treated with reverence. But Elizabeth, she gets brushed aside as though her love story was insignificant. Why does Alexandra get immortalized while Elizabeth is erased? Make it make sense. But perhaps the most egregious offense, one that still has fans fuming, is the total silence about Elizabeth's pregnancy. Cara didn't so much as acknowledge the unborn child. Not once did she speak of welcoming Jack's baby into the family or honoring his memory through this new life. Nothing. Not even a mention of the fact that Elizabeth is carrying a Dutton. And for a family so obsessed with legacy and bloodlines, that silence was deafening. The Duttons are known for protecting their own, for drawing blood over legacy. And yet, when it came to Elizabeth and her child, they looked the other way. It raises a chilling question. Was Elizabeth ever truly one of them? Or was she always going to be an outsider in their eyes? The only possible explanation, and it's one fans are already speculating on, is that Taylor Sheridan is playing the long game. That Elizabeth and Jack's child is not being ignored, but reserved for something bigger. Which brings us to the Madison, the upcoming sequel series. From what we know, this series will follow a family from New York, not the Duttons who somehow end up inheriting land in Montana. It seems likely that this outsider family is actually the descendants of Elizabeth and Jack. Think about it, a forgotten child, raised away from the ranch, stripped of the Dutton name, whose own grandchildren return to Montana generations later, unaware of the legacy they carry in their blood. That would be Sheridan's way of showing how legacy always finds its way home, even if the name is lost. The Dutton blood may have been exiled, forgotten, even rejected, but it will not be erased. So maybe Cara's silence wasn't just emotional cruelty. Maybe it was narrative misdirection. And maybe, just maybe, the Madison will be Elizabeth's revenge, her child's redemption, and proof that no matter how the Duttons tried to bury the past, the truth always comes back. Let me know in the comments, do you believe the Madison is the secret continuation of Elizabeth and Jack's legacy? Do you think the forgotten Dutton bloodline will rise again? And most importantly, did Elizabeth deserve better? Because if you ask me, her story's not over. We also know that 1944 is already in production and is expected to premiere in early 2026. For more weekly updates, discussions, and analysis on the Yellowstone universe, make sure to like and follow. Meanwhile, the video on the screen might also interest you.